Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine this. You're a prophet, just, sitting at home. Some important people are there with you. And then suddenly, whoosh, you're snatched up by the hair, no less.
Yeah, it's incredibly vivid, isn't it?
And whisked away. Not just anywhere, but you're taken to see these secret, really shocking things happening right under everyone's noses.
And in the last place, you'd expect the temple courts in Jerusalem. What on earth was going on there?
Well, that dramatic scene is exactly where we're starting our deep dive today. We're stepping right into a specific ancient text, Ezekiel chapter 8.
And we're using the source material you mentioned, which gives us a detailed analysis of this really pivotal chapter.
Right. Our source is basically a commentary, a study that walks us through this pretty dense and, frankly, quite disturbing vision, step by step.
Exactly. And the mission, you could say, based on this analysis, is to unpack the indictment that's laid out in Ezekiel 8. We want to understand, what exactly were the charges against ancient Israel, and what do those charges and God's reaction actually reveal, according to the source, that is.
And the source even gives us a really specific time marker, the 5th day of the 6th month of the 6th year.
And it points out right away the numbers might be significant. 6, often linked in this kind of interpretation to, like, man's works, human effort, while 5 is sometimes connected to grace, God's work. So the source suggests this timing itself frames it all as maybe a kind of battle between human efforts and divine grace.
And what's really striking, the commentary points this out, is that some of the leaders who are about to be, exposed in this vision, they were sitting right there with Ezekiel when it all started.
Wow. That detail, the source argues, really hammers home a point. A real relationship with God isn't about where you are physically or who you hang out with. It's fundamentally about the state of your heart, what's going on inside.
Okay, so let's dive into the vision itself. The analysis in our source describes the figure Ezekiel saw first. What did it look like?
Well, it's quite something. From the waist down, it looked like a man, but made of fire.
Fire, okay.
And then from the waist up, it was this gleaming, amber-colored brilliance, really bright.
How does the commentary interpret that?
It interprets this figure as a vision of Jesus Christ, actually. It suggests the light part comes from God's words. Like in Genesis, let there be light.
Yeah.
And the fire represents God's holiness, his presence. So according to this view, it's like God himself, through Christ, is delivering this indictment. It carries that weight.
Okay. And then comes that really jarring moment being taken by a lock of his hair, all the way to Jerusalem, to the entrance of the inner courtyard gate.
Yeah, being grabbed by the hair. The source offers an interesting perspective on that.
What's the take?
It suggests it's almost like a parent's last resort, to grab a child's attention when nothing else works.
Yeah.
A drastic, undeniable action.
To force him to see.
Exactly. God's way of drastically showing Ezekiel the hidden reality. The truth about people who looked righteous on the outside, maybe held positions of power, but were deeply involved in idolatry behind closed doors. It literally pulled him out of one reality to see another.
And the very first thing he sees, it's positioned right there, north of the altar gate. What does our source call it?
It calls it an idol that arouses God's jealousy, something that provokes his zealous indignation.
An idol of jealousy. Does the source identify it?
This study suggests it was likely the Asherah pole. It points back to 2 Kings 21, noting King Manasseh had put one up in the temple before.
Right, and King Josiah later removed it.
Exactly. So the commentary thinks this is probably that same idol brought back, reintroduced into the temple area, and it quotes the text about God's reaction, saying he has to distance himself from his own sanctuary because of these horribly disgusting practices. It shows just how deeply this provoked him.
But the vision doesn't stop there, does it? Ezekiel is then shown a hole in the wall.
And he has to dig through it, finds a hidden door, and when he goes through...
What does he find?
A secret room. The analysis describes carvings all over the walls, depictions of every kind of reptile and repulsive animal, along with all the idols of the house of Israel.
Reptiles and animals inside the temple complex.
Yeah, in this hidden space. The source calls it a secret sanctuary. Hidden from most people, perhaps, but the commentary stresses God knew it was there. This wasn't accidental sin. It was, deliberate, hidden worship.
And who was in this secret place?
Well, the vision reveals that too. Our source says it's 70 of the leading men of Israel. One is even named Yazanyahu. And each one is standing there holding an incense burner, bowing down to these idols In the dark, the text says.
70 leaders. And wait, didn't you say some leaders were sitting with him earlier?
That's the really poignant part the source highlights.
Yeah.
These were the same elders who were sitting with Ezekiel back in his house.
Wow. The hypocrisy is just staggering.
Totally. And their reason. The analysis points to what they were saying in their hearts, according to the text. It's both profound and tragic. They were thinking, Adonai can't see us. Adonai has left the land.
So they actually believed God had abandoned them.
That's how our source interprets it. They essentially concluded God was gone, so they felt justified, maybe, in replacing him with these animal gods, hoping to find favor or connection somewhere else.
It just keeps getting worse. The abominations revealed just keep escalating. Next, Ezekiel's taken to the north gate. What does he see there?
He sees women weeping for Tammuz.
Tammuz. That sounds familiar. Babylonian.
Exactly. Our source describes Tammuz as a Babylonian god linked to spring vegetation, the whole cycle of death and resurrection with the seasons. The commentary labels these women as nature worshipers, basically worshiping the creation rather than the creator. And it even draws a parallel, suggesting it's kind of like people today who might really praise nature or the environment, but deny the existence or authority of God behind it all.
Okay, and then comes what our source calls maybe the lowest point, the most direct insult.
Yeah, arguably. Ezekiel is brought right into the inner courtyard near the actual temple entrance, and he sees about 25 men. They're facing east, bowing down, worshiping the rising sun.
Worshiping the sun.
Yes. And get this, they're doing it with their backs turned to the temple of God.
Wow, okay, that is blatant.
Our source interprets that as being like a slap in the face to God. The ultimate act of disrespect, misdirected worship, right there in his own house, so to speak. The commentary suggests the equivalent today, from its perspective, might be people involved in astrology looking to the sun, stars, created things for guidance or worship, instead of the creator.
Now, one point our source really highlights about all these different practices is how casually people treated them.
Yes, that's a key part of the analysis. People would engage in this really deep idolatry, whether secret or kind of public, and yet they'd still show up for regular temple worship. Like the two weren't mutually exclusive in their minds.
It seems like there was no sense of contradiction for them.
Apparently not, or not enough. That casual attitude is crucial to the source's interpretation. It also explains that phrase, putting the branch to their nose.
Yeah, what was that about?
According to this study, it was some kind of ceremonial gesture used in idol worship, honoring the idols. But the source interprets this specific act in the whole context of Israel's behavior as showing that God's own people had effectively become a stench to him because of their unfaithfulness.
A stench. That's strong language.
It is, and particularly sharp because, as the commentary points out, Israel was meant to be different, set apart, a blessing, a light to the nations. But here they were, sinking even lower, the source argues, than some of the surrounding pagan nations in their practices.
So what was the result? The consequence of all this idolatry, hidden, open, casual. Our source describes God's reaction in pretty stark terms.
It does. The commentary quotes the text saying God would act in fury. His eye would not spare them. He would have no pity. It notes that even if they cried out loud to him later in distress, he would refuse to listen.
Why? Because they had gone too far.
Because, as the text says according to the source, they had filled the land with violence, and they kept provoking him further with all these abominations, both the secret ones and the ones out in the open.
Wow. This deep dive into Ezekiel 8, guided by our source material, it really lays bare the seriousness of hypocrisy, of hidden sin, of worship that isn't genuine.
It really does. And it highlights that the divine reaction described is, well, significant. Yeah. It definitely makes you think about the nature of genuine faith and how it's expressed. Our source material itself includes some additional points and links, connecting these themes to resources and ministries focused on encountering God authentically and living out faith today.
That's right. For instance, the source mentions resources available, some through programs like the Amazon affiliate program. There's a book it points to called Misfits for Jesus, True Accounts of People Experiencing Jesus. It's available on Amazon and apparently shares these incredible stories of God working miraculously, often through ministries like Enduring Freedom Ministries or EFM.
Right.
It sounds like a powerful read, especially as a contrast to the kind of empty worship we've just been talking about from Ezekiel 8. It highlights people genuinely experiencing and responding to Jesus.
Absolutely. And supporting ministries like EFM, as the source suggests, is presented as a tangible way to, participate in spreading hope and showing faith through action. Our source highlights one of their goals is establishing a food pantry in Jerusalem, Israel, a really direct way to care for people's basic needs while sharing spiritual hope.
Mm.
So if you listening feel moved by this whole discussion about genuine faith versus hypocrisy, the source provides information on how you could potentially support EFM's work through donations, directly helping efforts like that Jerusalem food pantry.
It's quite powerful, isn't it? How understanding these ancient texts about what genuine worship looks like and what happens when it's absent, how that can connect to modern efforts to live out and share faith in real, tangible ways.
It is, definitely. Bringing it back, though, to our deep dive into Ezekiel 8 and the sources analysis.
Right. Let's do a quick recap of the key takeaways from the commentary's look at this indictment. We saw that disturbing list of charges revealed in the vision.
Yeah, quite a list.
The idol of jealousy right by the altar. That secret room filled with carvings of repulsive animal idols.
The 70 leading men of Israel bowing down in the dark to those idols.
The women weeping for Tammuz at the temple gate.
And finally, those men worshiping the rising sun with their backs deliberately turned to God's temple.
And the source analysis really stressed the casualness, didn't it? How these sins were just mixed in with their regular religious life.
Exactly. That and the divine reaction described as fury, with God saying he wouldn't show pity or even listen to their cries anymore.
So thinking about all this, based only on the source material we've explored in this deep dive, what does this ancient indictment reveal to you about the difference between genuine worship and, well, hypocrisy or hidden spiritual compromise?
That really is the core question it leaves you with, isn't it? Especially thinking about that contrast the commentary drew between those elders outwardly sitting with the prophet,
right, looking respectable,
and inwardly, secretly, engaging in idol worship. The source states it pretty clearly. God's relationship with people is fundamentally about the condition of the heart. It's not just about physical location or outward appearances.
So here's a final thought to maybe mull over, drawn straight from this text and the analysis in our source. What might that imply about hidden practices or casual sins or just the general state of the heart today, whether those things are seen by others or completely unseen?
Definitely something to reflect on.
Indeed. And if you found this deep dive helpful and want to explore more topics like this, be sure to subscribe to the Olive Grove podcast on YouTube.